Salam, dear friends of BookBytes. Welcome to this edition on this actually warm winter's Sunday evening. And I think I'm warmed more by the idea that I've just had amazing literary celebrations this weekend. I was at the Kingsmead Book Fair yesterday with these incredible conversations. We launched the Give Me a Right series, but there were just so many powerful conversations happening around, and the beautiful weather just added to the literary celebrations, I think. So it was bookish fun all the way. I also bumped into our guest this evening. I'll be chatting to local author who's really been highlighting and getting sort of great accolade on recent works that have come out. And this is author Alistair Mackay. What's fascinating is I read The Child, his novel that launched last year, and before that, It Doesn't Have to Be This Way, has had beautiful sort of resonance in so many ways with his writings. And today we're looking at a collection of short writing, short pieces, short stories, The Lucky Ones and Other Stories. I absolutely enjoyed reading through these stories. I've actually bookmarked some steps, some pieces that I'll get into with the author now. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to welcome Alistair to the show this evening so that we can have um, a moment to pick his brain and see how, what it is that makes the writer tick. Alistair, welcome to Book
Mhm.
Bites. I'm so glad I finally have a chance to chat to you. And congratulations on
Thank
such
you.
a beautifully written collection. Welcome to Book Bites.
Thank you so much, Shafinaaz. It's so wonderful to be here. Thank you for inviting me onto the show.
And I know you've had like such a great time since the start of the launch of this book, and you're very busy at the moment. How was yesterday? I
Yeah.
mean, you had Kingsmead yesterday, and you had, I think, was it Bridge Books today? How's it been
Yes,
going?
yeah. It's been very, very busy. I'm up in Joburg I was up for Kingsmead yesterday, which was so much fun. I love the Kingsmead Festival, getting to see amazing writers. I always get very stressed about public speaking events, and then afterwards I always can't realize or can't remember why I got so stressed because I actually have so much fun when I'm up there, but get very nervous beforehand. But I had a great time. And yeah, then did an event at Bridge Books this morning. We did a bookish brunch. So we had some pastries and chatted about books and literature. And then I'm doing a launch tomorrow evening, and then flying home to Cape Town on Tuesday. It's been great, very inspiring weekend. I'm exhausted, but feeling very happy.
Well, I can see the bookish glow, so that's brilliant. And I'm very grateful, and along with my audience, that we have this opportunity to chat to you, especially since I've just read The Lucky Ones. We had you at Time of the Writer with The Child because there was just such beautiful commentary about your writing. Let's take you back for a minute and say, where did this all begin for you? Where did writing begin for you? And what does it mean for you, to express yourself in these beautiful forms of writing and prose that you put out into the world?
Thanks. I think for me, I'm one of those writers. I think I've always known I wanted to be a writer. I was writing from when I was very, very young. My mom still got a stash of little illustrated books that I wrote when I was like 5 or 6, which she's kept. And then I had an angsty teenage phase of writing a lot of poetry. I think writing for me is a way of processing my feelings. I think it's the way I learn what I really think about something. Often, if I'm going round and round in my head about something and I'm not really sure how I feel about it or what I think about it, when I write about it, that helps me clarify how I feel. So it's been a beautiful journey of initially thinking it's not possible to be a writer. I guess when I was growing up, I didn't know that many South African writers. It wasn't a thing that you could meet a writer really. It seemed out of reach. So it's been really wonderful that I've managed to do this.
No, I
Um,
mean, that's so true. And I think what's really special is that you had the support of your mom. As a young person, when
mm,
you're dreaming of being, whether it's saving people's lives, writing a book, or whatever the case might be, and you just have that one person who believes in you. And so many people ask me this, what do we do if my child wants to write? Self-belief and
yeah,
belief in a child is such an important thing.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
here you are.
It makes such a difference to give them the confidence in the field that they love. It's still going on. I don't know if you noticed in the acknowledgement in the back of in the back of the lucky ones. I thank my mom because she spams everybody she's ever met with my stories. Whenever if I ever send her anything I've written, she sends it to everybody. It probably annoys them so much, but it's very sweet.
Right. Now, I saw that it was absolutely beautiful. So I want to have a shout out. Hi, Al's mom. Thank you for what you do, so that we can read these beautiful stories. The lucky ones. I mean, as much as they're beautiful and you write with so much of empathy, your characters are compelling, but authentic and real and raw in their emotions. Let's talk about how short fiction, I mean, you're a successful novelist. In this case, short fiction allows us, within a short space of time, to get the message across, but also to package these strong characters in a short space of time. And it does
Yeah.
take great talent. Talk to us about your process and what it means to sort of condense your story into these short packages.
Thanks. I think short stories actually come more naturally for me than writing novels. I love the idea of just dipping in and out of a life, or dipping in and out of someone's experience, and getting a glimpse into that world in a really evocative way that really moves you. And so my struggle actually when I'm writing my novels is to try and lengthen it and to not be so not get to the point so quickly, you know. Um, and I think in vignettes when I was working on the child for my release last year, as you mentioned, it came to me in vignettes originally before I knew how to piece them together. And then once I had pieced the plot together in my mind, then I had to go back and sort of rewrite it. But they sort of emerged as these vignettes. And so I love writing short stories because um, they can be based on a character that I've seen out on the street or on the bus or wherever. You know, I can just see someone and imagine their life and what they're up to in a day, or it can just be a feeling that I'm trying to capture. That's often what starts the story for me, is that I'm trying to process, maybe writing about anxiety or writing about grief, and then I find, yeah, the short story form lets you have that focus, and it's almost like quite a pure experience, you know, because you don't have to keep track of all the moving parts like you do in a novel. You can just focus on the experience that character is going through in that moment, whether it's a day in their life or it can be a couple of scenes, couple of days. um but yeah, I just love the form.
I've often heard writers say that a short story can be the impetus for a longer piece. But I
Mm,
really believe, and you speak about the discipline, obviously, and that's what makes you good at the form, is that it does take, a lot to get it into that short space of time. So I think it takes talent also as much as it takes discipline. Let's talk about the power of imagination and the power of observation. How much is
mm.
there a balance, do you think, and how much of does each play in your writing process?
Sure, that's a tough one. I don't know if I can quantify the two of them. I think they're both very important. It maybe depends on the form of the story that you're writing. So I do sometimes write speculative fiction, so sort of lean into science fiction sometimes. And when you're creating a whole world that's different from the world that we live in. So one of the stories in The Lucky Ones and my first novel is set in the future where climate change has gotten really bad. With that, I suppose you really have to use your imagination, and you can let it run wild, and it's really enjoyable to do that. But in other stories, I guess if it's more of a realism that you're working with, I try be very observant about people. I do take notes. I keep notes on my phone when I'm walking about, and if I overhear a bit of conversation, it might make it into my little notes folder, or just observations about people, the way people interact at dinners or at parties. I guess it all gets stored away somewhere in my brain, and then it's used when I'm writing the stories. I guess when it's really working for me, when the fiction is really flowing, is when you're synthesizing those two parts. You're sort of using things that you might have observed about the world and inhabiting a character's sort of mental space, and then taking it from there and imagining what could happen in that life. But
I
my
love the
problem is
idea
is
that,
always, yeah.
yes, go on.
No, I was just going to say my problem is always that I struggle to not edit myself as I'm going. So I'm still learning how to just go with the flow and trust the process and think, okay, I can edit at a later point. You know, I don't need to make every sentence perfect as it's coming out. I need to get the story onto the page, and then I can come back and fix it.
I love how, there's this concept of being like an instrument as part of your process because you absorbing,
Yeah.
experiencing, observing, and then letting it out there in whatever form it takes in the form of your story and expression. But I think, when you talk about the editing process that goes with the writing, as much as you in that creative space, I think now that you've written so much, it's
Mm.
natural that you kind of sort of preempting how you want it to look. There's already that
Yes.
end process in mind because you already know how the process works. Talk to us about some of that, about getting through process, and then we'll talk about some of the thematic considerations in your book.
So yeah, so my big struggle is not to edit myself too early on. I do trip myself up because I want every sentence to be perfect as it's before I could move on. So I'm trying to not do that as much and to try and just outrun my monsters. I really enjoy the process of being edited. I know some writers really hate it, but I think I'm insecure enough that I need to bounce my ideas off someone. I need to kind of check that it's working, So I was in a writing group for quite a long time, which I really enjoyed, where we would send each other whatever we were working with, whether it was a chapter or a story, and sort of critiquing each other's work. Um, and then once the manuscript is accepted, I also enjoy that editing process because I feel like it's less scary now. I'm not the sole driver of this process. I think it's pretty good, but it's nice to be able to trust someone else to help you get it over the finish line and make sure that it shines, and to maybe highlight any blind spots. I'm always very cautious of having blind spots because I think fiction is all about empathy and trying to imagine what it's like to be someone else or to have someone else's experience. And there are going to be gaps in my ability to imagine what that's like. So also editing really helps me with that, make sure that I'm being as sensitive and as empathetic and as compassionate as I can to my characters.
I think taking that space of empathy and also in a way stepping back and saying this is not only my story is such a
Yeah,
special part of the process. And I want to just give a shout out to the great editors that we get to work with because they definitely help us see the story from behind the smoke. Um,
absolutely.
and Stevlin, let's just say hi to Stevlin on
Yes.
that as well. She's done
Hi,
amazing work
Stephen.
in retrieving
Absolutely amazing.
these beautiful stories. The lucky ones, etc. I mean, I read through the acknowledgements and I see that there's this process of how you've brought together new stories and stories that have
Yes.
been written in different ways. And it makes sense to me because when I
Mm.
was reading through the collection, I get the senses that there's this like freeze frames of like you're watching a movie and there's these freeze frames of different stories coming through from different timelines. And you also write very comfortably about Johannesburg or Cape Town or New York. Talk to us
Mm.
about timelines and place in your stories.
So these stories were not written in sequence, so some of them are a bit older than others, as you mentioned. I've been writing short stories for a while. I was lucky enough to get to do a creative writing master's in New York. So I spent a few years in New York, and that was so influential for me. It was such a inspiring period in my life, just in terms of that city is so full of interesting people, and the people you see and meet are so inspiring. And I got to experiment with different styles of writing. So I think the cities, and I grew up in Joburg and I live in Cape Town. So those three cities have been quite formative in my life. And I like to have a strong sense of place in my stories. I really enjoy it when I'm reading something that has a strong sense of place. And especially if it's a city I know, I can remember what it's like to walk down that street or to visit that park that's in the story. So I like to include a lot of those details. Um, yeah, and I think each of them has such a distinct character. Each of those cities has such a distinct character, and the way that it affects people is so different. And I like to include that in the stories. Um, in terms of timelines, I uh, I wasn't very strategic about it, to be honest. I suppose I was following what I wanted to write about and some of the characters and themes that I wanted to write about, and some of those worked better in the past. So there's a historical fiction story in this book. Some of them I needed to extrapolate into the future, and a lot of them are set kind of in the current time. Um, some were inspired by my experiences in New York and moving home during the drought. That's also made its way into a lot of my stories. That's sort of the climate anxiety of moving back to Cape Town when it was running out of water. So I suppose that timeline was very influential, and it actually helped me. Sorry, I'm rambling a bit here, but that actually helped me structure my first novel. It doesn't have to be this way. The countdown to day zero. I don't know if you remember the countdown clock to day zero. I was really struggling with how to structure. It doesn't have to be this way because it's sort of in the future, but I needed some stuff to happen in the past, and I was telling things in backstory, and it wasn't working. And then the countdown clock to day zero made me realize I can actually just set this up as a countdown itself. This section happens now when there's 15 years to go, and then there's 12 years to go, and then there's 9 years to go, and it's getting closer and closer to this end point. Um, yeah.
I actually remember being in Cape Town around early 2018 when the water issue was just such a massive
Oh,
problem back then.
yeah, it was very
Um,
scary.
And I mean, it's important that even in your stories, there's so many of these themes that come through, and the observances and the experiences that you bring through the stories make them very, very relatable. I mean, even
Mm.
sort of um, visibility for gender identity, coming from different perspectives. I mean, South Africa, we draw from so many cultural backgrounds that have different views of who we are and
Yes.
how we experience life, and sort of the lived experience is not seen or
Mm.
invalidated in so many ways. Let's
Mm.
talk about some of the voice given through these stories, and I think this is the power of short story for me, is that it's impactful in its. I don't want to say little. It's impactful in how it's packaged, because and I've seen also a lot more of short story um, taking on and grabbing reader attention for its ability to give voice. And I think because we have shorter attention spans, you're actually getting the message and
Yes.
the entertainment and the story in a quicker way. But let's talk about some of the more serious themes. You deal with gender-based violence. You
Mm.
deal with um,
Mm.
validation and visibility for gender identity, and various other themes as well. Talk to me about some of the themes that you've explored, and you know what story can highlight and enhance through this method.
Sure. Thank you. I think that's, for me, one of the biggest joys of writing a story collection is that you can play with different perspectives and tell stories from so many different points of view. I think it's also one of the best things about being South African is that we are such a diverse country. And so I think it's one of our strengths, and it's also one of the things that I'm drawn towards writing about, because in many ways we're still struggling to find our way to reach across those historical divides, and a lot of the characters in my stories and in my novels are trying to reach across those divides and bridge those gaps in lived experience, and find ways to create meaning and create community and love one another across differences in experience. And one of the reasons for the title of the collection is also actually sort of the luck of birth. It's so random. The family that we're born into, the kind of life we get to experience is random. It's pure luck, whether we're an insider or an outsider, whether we're privileged or not privileged. And so that theme, I was very conscious of that working on this collection. And I try to tell stories from very different points of view. I wanted to really explore that, not only just to stretch empathy. I think, as I was saying, I think fiction is a wonderful tool for empathy, and I think we could all do with more empathy and imagining what it's like to be a very different kind of person from ourselves. And so I did try to include all kinds of stories in this. There's queer black characters, and there's mothers, and there's homeless people, and there's people who've been evicted from their homes, and there's someone who's having a mental breakdown because he's lost his partner. Um, yeah, I wanted to have the fullness of life, the full rich experience of life in this collection. In
I mean,
terms of
I
which
enjoyed
stories,
the
yeah,
I enjoyed the story. I mean, you've captured the feeling of the pandemic life, and then there was a
mm,
story about somebody who's watching friends leave. You know,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
what a beautiful story! There's despair and there's hope, and there's so many emotions evoked through these stories.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. That's really wonderful to hear. That's the main thing for me about being a writer is I really want to make people feel things. I want to move people. I'm not so concerned with plot. It's more about the emotional effect I can have. Um, Yeah, the pandemic piece was also quite cathartic to write. I wrote that when I was feeling very anxious about the pandemic, and it was nice to just imagine getting out. The character in that story, just that whole story takes place over the course of a walk in the mountains in Cape Town, and his sort of thought process and what's happening with his mother, who's very ill. And he's thinking about his mother, and he's thinking about humans placed on the earth and what we've done to the climate. And so it was enjoyable to write that, just interspersing his walk through nature with all of his thoughts and all of the fears, and trying to get the hell away from people so that he feels a bit safer.
I actually bookmarked a page in that specific story when you talk about Robert McFarlane's landmarks, and he writes about
Yes.
the need for particularizing language. And I really, that resonated for me. Particularizing language for the landscapes we love, the way light strikes water, just so the distinction between moor and bog. We protect only what we love, and the more we name and notice about the natural world around us, the more we love it. And you talk about particularized language for, like, obviously the protagonist's mother. So this
Mm.
interplay between experiencing the walk through nature and the grief of what's happening in the story. Talk to us about that. I mean, that really struck me as it stood out. It spoke to the writer and the academic in me.
Oh yeah. Oh, you're going to scare me here now, Shafinaaz, because I'm not an academic. So I hope I can give you an answer that lives up to that. I I absolutely love the natural world. It really helps calm me for my mental health. It's really important for me. And so when I discovered Robert Macfarlane's writing, it was wonderful for me to get, sort of gave me permission to see that you can write about this in a really, really beautiful way. And that passage I find so interesting. What I was trying to explore in that passage is this relationship with nature and how language is sort of both a barrier between us and nature and the way that we can access it. And the more we name things, the more we notice the details in things, and we can love them. And in the South African context, from this character's point of view, he's an English speaker, and he's also mourning the fact that, in the UK where Macfarlane lives, a lot of those words are enmeshed in sort of folklore, and bogs have stories attached to them, and a lot of that was lost because of colonialism in South Africa, and so we don't necessarily know what the indigenous name for a certain aspect of Fynbos might have been, and so there's a lot of loss also that I'm trying to explore through that, and also in that I'm trying to capture the details of the protagonist's mother, because I think that's also where fiction writing really shines, is when it's I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. The more specific you are with the writing, the more universal it feels. And so if you can really describe someone in a way that's absolutely clear and crystal clear, I think we can all maybe see our own mothers in it, or feel something for the character's mother. So it's about really noticing the small details about a person so that you can capture it and put it on the page.
I really appreciate, and it comes through in your stories, how with fiction, fiction is somewhat more sort of forgiving in a way, and
Mm-hmm.
allows more stretch of imagination in discovering sometimes difficult conversations. And difficult conversations can be had through the art of fiction, while at the same time, there's this polarity of capturing detail, as you talk about, the particularization. And I think for me, that was what I was completely fascinated about. And the next layer to it is also, and this is part of my review, to say that the how this collection was brought together, not written from beginning to end as something that will be packaged and published in that way. And I think I appreciated how that happened, that sort of undulation of stories through
Mm-hmm.
time and space, and carrying so many themes that are, like I said, sometimes difficult conversations that can't be had, but through story they're just forgiving and open and accepting, and form those bridges.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks. Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. So this doesn't have an overarching plot like a novel would, but it was quite fun when putting it together. You have to apply the novelist's brain in putting the collection together. How do you create that same landscape of highs and lows, and take the reader on an emotional journey, just like a novel, but through like the selection of which stories you're going to include and where you're going to put them, and what is the feeling of this story and how does it relate to the one after it. So hopefully that works in sequence like that. Mm.
Absolutely. So what can we hope to see from your pen in the future? I have to ask the question.
I know, but it's a scary question because I'm not quite sure at the moment. I am working on a new novel, but it's very early days, so you know what it's like. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not yet, so I don't know if it's going to be anything, but hopefully there will be a novel in the next year or two. I'm not Definitely won't be in the next year. I was at Sven Axelrad's book launch the other night, and he was saying he wants to do 5 books in 5 years. I've done 3 books in 3 years, and I need to have a break. I need a year off. I don't want to release a book next year, but maybe the year after that, if all goes well, there will be another novel from me.
I think it's absolutely fantastic when you just go with the process and let it carry you through. I mean, Sven is a writing machine. There's no doubt about that.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I think we look forward to seeing what comes in the future, whatever that process looks like, and however long it takes. I also know that as you're launching the Lucky Ones right now, I hope that inspiration carries some creative energy back into your writing process. And we wish you everything of the best as the Lucky Ones makes its way out. You did say you're launching tomorrow evening. Tell us some of the details.
Yes, so I'll be doing a launch event in Joburg tomorrow evening at Love Books in Melville. It's at 5:30 for 6. Jared Thompson will be interviewing me. I think it should be a really wonderful conversation. I'm really looking forward to it. Um, yeah, it's usually a really nice crowd at Love Books, so that should be fun. And then I can go collapse in a heap after this very hectic weekend.
Absolutely. And more importantly, people can come to the launch and get signed copies of your book,
Yes,
which is
they can. They
what
can.
it's about.
And come and meet
Um,
me and come speak to me. I love meeting readers. It's the best part of the job is meeting people, especially if they've read my work and it affected them in some way. It really means a lot to me. So that would be great.
Fantastic. We wish you everything of the best from us on the BookBytes team. And I know that people will be making their way to the launches or picking up copies from bookstores around the country. Alistair, thank you for your time. Congratulations, and wishing you everything of the best as you go through the rest of these launches.
Thank you so much, Shafinaaz. This has been so much fun. Love chatting to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. And we hope to meet you again at future events, bookish celebrations. That's it from us on Book Bites this evening. We got to chat to local author Alistair Mackay about The Lucky Ones launching tomorrow at Love Books. There have been a string of launches. Please look out on the social pages for NB Publishers for future launches in other parts of the country. That's it from me this weekend. Enjoy what's left of it, and I hope it's with some amount of literary celebration. Assalamu alaikum from us on the Book Bites team.